Alright, welcome to part 2. And here we got the 49 version, which I do have to say is one of my favorite Little Women stories as well. And this one stars June Allyson as Jo, Peter Lawford as Laurie, Margaret O'Brien as Beth, Elizabeth Taylor as Amy, Janet Leigh as Meg, and Mary Astor plays Marmee. And there's the back of it here. Okay, so this movie, again, is one of my favorite adaptations, probably because it's MGM style, and I do love the MGM movies. However, there is some more complaints to this one than I had with the 39 version. For example, I don't have a problem with Peter Lawford. I think he was really cute back in the day, and I think he was an okay actor. However, for the choice of him playing Laurie was maybe far-fetched. Laurie's character was supposed to be a wild guy, a lot like Jo. But Peter Lawford is not a wild guy. He's very gentlemanly-like. Although he had some of the characteristics very well for Laurie, he just wasn't really the greatest guy to play the part. June Allyson, again, was also okay. I guess she got the spirit of Jo, alright, but I do prefer Katharine Hepburn. But June Allyson does an okay job as well. Elizabeth Taylor as Amy. Oh boy, where do I start? She's a spoiled little brat. As you have seen in my previous video, I said that Joan Bennett played her like a brat in the beginning, but then mellowed. Elizabeth Taylor doesn't really mellow until like halfway through the movie. She is such a little brat in the beginning of this, and I know that's her character, but I just couldn't stand her character as Amy. However, I do have to say that even in a blonde wig, she was still gorgeous. Even after, I actually found her to be more beautiful the scenes where Beth becomes sick, and Amy's wig goes from kind of tied up curly to down curly with just a little bow on the top of her head, but she was still gorgeous. Janet Leigh as Meg, I loved her. I loved Janet Leigh as Meg, and she would have to be one of my favorites. And again, I would choose her over Trini. Again, no offense to the 1994 version fans of Little Women. So, I do love Janet Leigh as well. Margaret O'Brien, once again, was a good Beth. However, the only problem I have between Beth and Amy is that Beth is older than Amy. Yet, in this version, Amy is actually taller than Beth. And therefore, it kind of makes Beth look like she's the baby of the family and not Amy. But I think choosing Margaret O'Brien was a very good choice. Margaret does a really great job playing the role of Beth, and quite frankly, my sister loved her in this movie. She also loved Margaret O'Brien in Jane Eyre, but she happened to love this version of Beth, and I think she chose her over Claire Danes, but preferred Claire Danes over Jean Parker, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's for the casting. The story and pacing, once again, is also very good. Let's talk about the problems I have with the film. The character's a little bit more blander. The dialogue is not as heartfelt like in the 33 version. It's more bland and just weird. And I'll give you an example. In the scene between the 1933 version and this version, where Jo goes to sell a book, and the guy gives her $1. In the 1933 version, where Jo tells Laurie he's excited for her and happy for her, and he picks her up and swings her around once, and he's just so happy for her. Peter Lawford plays this scene with blandness and says, like, he's not very happy for her. I'm thinking, yo, put some feeling into it, and come on, she sold a book. Even if it's for $1, it's still good. Let's see, what else? I also would like to say that the proposal scene in this one between Brooke and Meg was a little bit more harsher, like how it was in the book. Meg was a bit harsh with Brooke, and they kind of played that off in this movie. Whereas in the 1933 version, she was more shy and sweet and wasn't mean to him at all. Okay, Oh, there is also one scene involving this movie that I just don't get. The character of Jo and Beth are really close, and they're they just love each other so much. However, there's a scene where they're going to Laurie's party, and they're walking. Joe's on their yard on the other side of the fence, while the 3 other girls are walking on the other side of the fence, going to the house in a more proper way. And they're telling Joe not to do this, not to do that, and yada yada. And she's like, "Let's be elegant or die," and jumps over a fence. Meg and Amy gasp and is like, "Oh, so boyish," which makes sense. However, Beth almost has the same attitude, which confused me because I thought Beth would just be okay with anything that Joe did and didn't care how she acted. So I thought that that was a little weird. I think that's about it for just this movie review. So I think that I just have to do, like, the comparison. But I will say one thing. As far as, like, the characters being bland and stuff, there was one thing I have to mention. The proposal scene is also very bland between Joe and the professor. In the 1933 version, the proposal scene was very sweet and just, it was well done. Whereas in this version, once again, it was bland. And my sister was watching it, and she's like, "There's no feeling into it. Give me a break." So, my advice... Well, you know what? I'll give you that advice when I do the comparison.